People often say that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law are forever enemies. It is no coincidence that people say so. There are many cases of broken marriages that stem from the mother-in-law. Hi everyone, I'm Julie, 29 years old, and I'm also an unlucky woman with a mother-in-law as above. Before I got married, I had watched many movies and read articles covering such issues with mother-in-law, but never believed. But how ironic, my mother-in-law was exactly like that. I always wanted my husband and me to have a private house, but we didn't save enough money, so we had to live with his family. I'm a person who values beauty and likes to look good, so I usually deduct a small amount of salary to buy clothes and cosmetics. I think that when I'm beautiful, my husband will love me and be proud of me. However, my mother-in-law seemed annoyed about that. Just the first few months of our marriage, I was given a lecture by my mother-in-law about the need to save money because in a maximum of 2 years, I would have to give birth to a baby. How can my mother-in-law be so assertive like that? Children are godsends, and my career was on the rise, so I didn't want to have babies in the next 3 to 4 years. My husband also agreed with this plan, and that was when I knew the relationship between us started to have problems. A year after living under the same roof, I always listened to my mother-in-law, refraining from any discontent with her, but somehow she always had a grudge against me. Since her lecture, I have reduced shopping, and if I bought something, it would be some relatively cheap items. I was busy with work, so my mother-in-law used to cook meals for the whole family, but I gave her an abundance of money to go to the market to buy food every month. But every meal, she would lecture me about how carefree I was, and it was a bad thing. According to her, I focused too much on the things outside, while I couldn't fulfill the duty to take care of my family. I mumbled an apology and promised to work harder to cook. But she just shook her head and said that I was an ignorant fool. I was tired of such conversations. Many times I tried to ask if something was wrong, but she only gave me her glare. Since those times, in front of guests at family parties, my mother-in-law started to test my endurance. She wouldn't respect me anymore and boasted that I was only good at spending money and neglecting family. Worse, she even confided to her neighbors that her son was wrong to marry a woman like me. At that point, I couldn't stand it anymore. But it is worth mentioning that my husband, though loved me so much, only advised me to stay calm, but never spoke up to his mother to defend me. For the next 2 months, everything was in turmoil. My mother-in-law hated me clearly and asked me to give her more money than usual so she could hire a maid. I was too stressed out at work. My husband also told me not to argue with my mother about that, so I agreed. The day the maid came to my house, I was surprised because of her appearance. She didn't look like she was from the countryside or was so poor that she had to work as a servant. On the contrary, the clothes she wore looked as cool as mine from the day before. The most annoying thing was that my mother-in-law and her chirping in the kitchen together like mother and daughter. That evening when it was late and she still did not leave, I asked and my mother-in-law explained this to my face. Actually, Stephanie is close to us, not a stranger. Knowing that our family needed help, she decided to come. Stephanie will be here with us, and everyone should treat her like a family member. At that moment, my husband came home. Stephanie, why are you here? Wait, how did he know her name? That moment, I was really confused. Watching my mother-in-law and Stephanie smiling and welcoming my husband made me extremely inhibited. I quickly pulled him up to our room and interrogated. It turned out that Stephanie was my husband's ex-girlfriend. What was my mother-in-law planning? My husband was also confused. Stephanie and he were in love for several years in college, but then she broke up with him to move to another city for unknown reasons. He felt betrayed and quickly forgot her, but my mother-in-law seemed to regret her. I asked him to go downstairs to clarify everything to his mother and send Stephanie away, but he acted so powerlessly. Only when I started crying would he go down to talk to his mother. Only then, the reason my mother-in-law hated me was clarified. When my too soft and gentle husband mumbled his words to ask Stephanie to leave, my mother-in-law was angry. She said he didn't think for his elderly mother. When she needed help because her daughter-in-law was useless, he chased the good people away. Hearing that, the heat in my body boiled up. I stood up and said, "Mother, may I ask you, since the day I joined this family, have I done nothing wrong that you always hate me so much?" To my surprise, my mother-in-law stood up and shouted, "It is not wrong to say that you are dumb. You've been married to my son for so many years and yet could not give him a child. You are truly a poisonous, fruitless tree. You'd better divorce him so my son can remarry and have kids." Too shocked by those words, I sobbed. My husband hugged me for comfort, but made me even more frustrated because he didn't shield me. I ran upstairs, collected some personal belongings to leave. Unable to stop me, my husband was about to follow me when his mother said, "If you follow her, I will kill myself. Either that infertile wife or your biological mother. Make your choice." I determined to leave so that he could show his manliness once in his life and defend me, but I was only bitterer when I saw my husband standing still helpless crying. A month after I left, my husband and I kept in touch, and he often came to my company, waited for me to finish my work to apologize, and begged me to return. But this marriage was too tiring for me, so I demanded a divorce. My husband insisted on not signing the divorce and kept following me to my rented apartment and refused to go home to avoid his mother and Stephanie. According to him, his mother used every trick to arrange for him and Stephanie to arouse feelings. Sometimes, Stephanie dressed very sluttily and deliberately touched his body, but he refused. His mother also pressured him to divorce me and marry Stephanie soon. She is too crazy. But just a month later, while at work, I suddenly received a phone call from my mother-in-law. Her voice on the phone sounded hurt, so I agreed. We met at a restaurant near my company. Through the narrative and the tears of my mother-in-law, I learned that Stephanie is a crook. It turned out that she was the one who came to find my mother-in-law, not vice versa. At first, she acted obediently and flattered to my mother-in-law, making her lower her guard. After that, she solicited her to join an investment deal with unbelievable interest. My mother didn't know anything about investment, so she did listen and gave Stephanie the money, which was not small. And just 2 days ago, Stephanie disappeared along with my mother-in-law's money, leaving this letter behind. "Thank you for the money. Can you imagine if I became your daughter-in-law, how much more difficult this plan would be to implement? Luckily, your son no longer loved me, and I'm so grateful for that. As your daughter-in-law, she was stupid and pitiful to endure you so long. You should ask for her forgiveness, old lady." Wow. So in the end, someone had managed to teach my mother a lesson. I had to hold my laughs when imagining that satisfying scene in my mind. My mother-in-law sat there sniffling, apologizing, and begging me to return home. My husband still loves me very much, and because of the catastrophes she caused, her son suffered. I think she acted like that just because she pitied her skinny, withered son, but not because of loving me. To be honest, I was moved a bit by that, but I'd like to consult you guys first. Should I forget everything and return to that house? I still do not trust my mother-in-law very much. Please help me.